Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Today, we are covering a topic that Lynn and I know so well, because this is how we have started and finished every single one of our businesses that we have had, bought, sold, created, partnered, and etc. And that is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping, baby.
Should be a country song.
It should be. It probably is.
It probably is. It'll be
boot scooting.
Song.
I know
there is.
Yeah, I know boot scooting, baby. That's a song.
Is that close enough? All right. So what is bootstrapping? Bootstrapping is where you put in your own work to create your business. And regardless of what business, like Amanda and I have had a variety of businesses, including brick and mortars, including, multiple employees. And so it's not just the hobby businesses that are bootstrapped, which a lot of people probably are doing, where they put in their own money, their own time, their own efforts to get the ball rolling, versus what has become a lot more popularized. And it's really interesting because I've been seeing the other side recently, living in Bangkok and being connected in this world in the venture capitalism, where you get investors, even for small companies, to get to the next level. And you know what? Here's the thing. There are advantages to both. However, there are things in the bootstrapping aspect that absolutely need to be if you are getting investors, versus I don't necessarily see as many of the aspects of if you're going out and getting money that can be put into the bootstrapping side, except for some mindset stuff. So let's break it down, Amanda. Let's talk about bootstrapping, what it means, and really like what are the key aspects of, regardless if you're getting investors and or rolling up your sleeves and putting in that work, key aspects that need to be had.
Yeah. So I am obviously, since I have done it, I'm a huge fan of bootstrapping. And it's not just that I don't like owing people money, which is another thing as well. I don't like getting loans. I don't believe in taking out debt that is unnecessary, which when I'm starting a business, I'm not saying I've never taken out a loan. Those are already established businesses, and it's to bring myself up to a much higher place. But when I'm starting a business, one of the things I noticed that I've got a client that I'm thinking of right now, which is why I'm smiling. They were wanting to start a business and didn't want to have any of their own capital in. So they wanted to finance 100% of the business through a bank. And we wrote up a business plan and did all the things. And I just remember advising her, saying, I know that this is what you want. I know you want the bank to just write you a check for $1 million. I'm just telling you right now that without any collateral, without any like capital of your own, the likelihood of somebody coming in at a local bank with this isn't like Shark Tank. This is like a smaller scenario of just handing you $1 million. And that, it's very unlikely, even with the best business plans. And I mean, obviously, I think we can all tell she did not get $1 million from the bank. And there were a lot of things that went into this advisory meeting. However, the fundamental thing that she brought to the table here, which I think I see so often in people who are reaching out to this venture capitalist world, like, I want to get funded, I want to get a loan, is that they don't really understand the numbers as thoroughly as somebody who has bootstrapped or who has the idea of bootstrapping. Because when you are starting with your own money, let's say you have $5 to start your lemonade stand, and you have to go to the store and you have to buy all the supplies, you have to do all the labor, you understand the concept of that money more than if your mom gives you $5 or $10 and says, go buy some stuff, and then like, here you go, hire somebody, do whatever. So the core of bootstrapping, I think one of the number one things you learn as a bootstrapper, I'm not saying that all have it, but it's the number one thing I've learned as a bootstrapper, is how to stretch my dollar, how to work efficiently, how to use the money properly, how to understand where the money is going and where it isn't going, and to really be able to understand how to put together a business plan that reflects my use of money in a different way. Because I feel like a lot of people who are entering the world of business now who want someone else to pay for it, and I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody who does that. However, some of those fundamental knowledge of how a business runs cannot be learned simply by collecting a check and then you mythically learn it. It either has to be taught or has to be learned through experience, but it doesn't really come just because you suddenly have funding. And so I think that that's a hard lesson that a couple of my clients have learned, is they have this money and then they don't have anything other than the money to back it up, and broad ideas, big dreams, and then the money runs out and they wonder what happened.
Well, no action and no connection. And I like that you talked about like I forget the term that you used in the relation to money, given or earned, or if it's yours, right? What was the term that you used?
You're asking me to remember something I said 5 minutes ago. I can't even remember what I ate today. You're hilarious.
I know. And I agree with that. I definitely talk a lot about like, there's a difference between, the kid that earns their college degree, like puts in the work, and you're an example of this, or that mommy and daddy pay for it. And even though your parents could have paid for it, like you paid for your own college education, and the way you maneuvered through it was very differently than most. And again, we are generalizing everybody. And I mean, I'll speak for both of us because I believe, Amanda, if you are in the venture capitalist world, like I do really appreciate it. And I see so much value in it. And it's, back in the day, it was, you did have to go to a traditional bank to get a loan. And now that we've come more into this world, and I absolutely do believe in it. Like back in the day, my ex-husband and I did a lot of real estate stuff, and it was, how you made money is you use somebody else's money to leverage instead of putting your capital into it. And I get that. And I appreciate that. Here's the thing though, with the tools or the skill sets that you learn as bootstrapping, is that connection, or is that engagement? Because a lot of times what I've seen, and I've had conversations with many liaisons, many consultants in the industry, in the venture capitalist world at high level, that deal with like some of the wealthiest families in the world, handling their money, putting them into, and it's amazing. And the thing is these people know that the majority of their money is going to go away, which is kind of sad, but they have the money to kind of throw away. However, these people who are starting the businesses, who are asking for the funds, like, don't you want the business to be successful? Don't you want it to be long-term? Don't you want to be able to turn around? Because statistically, those businesses that are bootstrapped versus those that are venture capitalists or like invested in that aspect, because the bank to me is slightly different, but venture capitalists is a very different, because they have your name and your mortgage and like everything, like they can come after you. With venture capitalists, that usually is not like the term, like the investors are going into it knowing that they could lose money. But the statistically, the bootstrapping businesses last longer. They're more sellable. They actually have a longer shelf life because there are systems and structures that are put in. There's a connection that can be put in. I will say too, though, with bootstrapping businesses, what I've seen, and I actually should look up the statistic, what I've seen is that it's harder for those individuals to sell those businesses because they're more personally attached. But the efforts that they put into, they actually put the work into it, versus, like Amanda said, just kind of like going through the motions, like living this high life with this money and not really looking at, it's almost like the keeping up with the Joneses mentality is kind of what I've saw. And it makes me sad because having all of that money, you could do so much more. I mean, I think of like my businesses, and if I had somebody who said, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million, like the difference that I could have done in that particular business would have been exponential, because then I would have had a different financial backing. And I'm the same with Amanda. I don't like to owe people money. I don't like that, like, necessarily agreement. And I believe in that work. I believe in that grit. I believe in being, and Amanda and I were just literally having this conversation about that scrappiness. There's that scrappiness that you have, which gives you the ability to be able to pivot, to be agile, to be able to like make decisions differently, to be able to move your people forward. And a lot of times too, I feel like it can make you a better leader, because you are leading by example versus leading from a position on a pedestal. And again, we are generalizing here. It's not absolutely the black and white kind of separation.
Yes. And I love that you talk about the scrappiness, because I feel like that's one of the things also when you're bootstrapping, there's so much of you physically, mentally, emotionally involved in, and maybe not forever, but at least for certain the first few years as you're building that business and trying to get to a place where it is self-sufficient. There's so much of that plays into that scrappiness, that you can pivot, you can alter the course of your clients, of your business, of your products, of your services, and you have this kind of energy that you create in your own workings. And I don't, in all the times that I've had larger investments come in, again, it's not like I didn't use the money. It's not like I'm like, oh, sad to have this money. It's more that I didn't feel as connected to it. I didn't feel like it was mine to take care of it. I felt less inclined to really
Use it to its
push and use to its fullest, because it felt like a safety cushion. And so as an entrepreneur and as somebody who needs that, who thrives on that kind of risk and change and development, I felt like it was a safety net that I didn't really fully push. And I didn't really fully come to the place where my business could have really used it, because I just was like, well, it's not really, and number one, it didn't feel like it was my money, even though it was given to me. And I felt weird. And that's a personal thing. It felt like I wanted to make sure it was secure enough to pay back, and I never wanted it to fail. And so I felt more protective of it. It's like when you travel and you have someone with you and you're traveling by yourself and you're like recklessly adventuring and almost dangerously. And then when someone comes with you, that trip suddenly becomes all about that other person, like protecting them and making sure they have a good time. And I felt like that's a very similar dynamic when I was working with other people's money versus bootstrapping and really pivoting and really getting into my business and like the gritty parts and the ugly parts, and then flipping it around. And I think that's something that you really can't get when you don't have that full investment. And again, generalizing, this is just my interpretation of it, and this is my experience with bootstrapping. I feel like I am fully invested in it when I know it's my butt and my power, my passion, and my sweat on the line. And I go further for myself and my team when I'm all in.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say, listen, for those of you that are bootstrapping your businesses, good for you. And how can you continue moving that forward? Because I will say that the downfall of bootstrapping is sometimes we can become so pigeonholed in the working in our business, we forget to work on the business. So it's really important to like make sure that we're watching that aspect of it as well, because we're so, and Amanda and I, we talk about this, and we were actually just talking about this on our last podcast about being vulnerable. So I'm going to share something. Like, we both like get in these rabbit holes where we're working just in our business, dealing with the day to day, and not, even though we both help our clients create, some of them millionaires ever. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it's a good thing. Like, we help create results, but we can also get super stuck in our own business in the business versus the on the business. And we forget about like continuing to build our team members and supporting them and working more for future versus the reactive and active kind of aspect. And so our bootstrappers, like, make sure that you're paying attention to that. For our VCs and those in that world, like, really honor that money, look at it and actually like analyze it. Like make sure you're putting in the systems and structures into the business aspect and not just into the product. Because a lot of times with the VCs, like they have this great product and, you know, they want $1 billion for it, but yet there's no substance to it. And so I think that that's where you can learn from the bootstrappers, is because there is substance, even if it's not recorded. There is substance because they're going through the motions. They've made the work. They've actually accomplished making that business happen. And so for the VC world, I would say like, and I know I have a friend who's a consultant, and this is what I have a couple of friends that are consultants in this world, besides being that liaison between the investors and the people who need the money, the VCs, and a couple that actually run big teams with this. And they do have some consultants that will help people, or they've found consultants outside, myself being one of them, to help them actually work on the business aspect and the people aspect and the leadership aspect, because that's important, not just the product. Because if you look at the money, and you can burn through that money really quickly. And this is what happened, because they're just buying frivolously. They're not necessarily really putting in the work of what's long-term versus what is in the now. It's almost like a, you know, instant gratification type of kind of way of looking at things versus the long-term and the realistic sellability of that particular product or service down the line. Because I mean, yes, you can make money by selling ideas and some of the superficial things, but really most businesses are sold on the processes and the systems, and like that meat of it, you will get more money because you have more to it. I mean, unless it's this unicorn thing, which again, it happens. However, the majority of you don't have the unicorn thing. Like that is why it's called a unicorn, because it's a very small, very tiny percentage of people who actually hit that, which is great to aspire to be. You know, I think of all these, I need to say this, but I look at like, this is how I compare it, to put it into like realistic terms. All of these individuals who are looking to get investors, to me, it reminds me of all of the high school kids who are going to grow up to be a pro football player or pro basketball player. And although there are lots of pro football players and pro basketball players, very few of you will become pro. Okay. Very few of you will be signing those multi-million dollar deals that are the top picks. Very few of you in comparison to the rest. So with that being said, like, how do you still make a sustainable and scalable business? And that is working on the background. And to me, that's what you can pull from the bootstrapper side. You know, so I think that we can really learn from both aspects, because even with the bootstrapper side, like what we can learn from the VC world is like that believing and dreaming, and like that believing that all this money is going to come to me. Like you can do that, but it be your client paying you, or like new opportunities within your business. Because I think that's a beautiful thing to watch these individuals have balls to go out and say, hey, I need $1 gajillion for this little like toy that I want to create, but I have no business plan. Hey, get on with your bad self. Like that takes nuts, guys. And I appreciate that. And yeah, I said,
yes, but that's just, no, I 100% agree with you, because that's the big negative I have with some of my, you know, acquaintances, clients, just the image of the world is not having any, like just wanting it because you want it and not putting any of the work in to get there. And that's the big downside I see. And it's not everybody. It's a generalization. Like this is not everybody. There are plenty of people who go after venture capitalist opportunities that are way qualified. And there's also people who just want somebody to give them a bunch of money for an idea that they had, and then they have no real understanding of how to get that thing put in place. And so when I think of like Shark Tank, for example, the reason why that show is great, well,
I love
there's lots of reasons. There's lots of reasons that show is great. And the people who are thinking about giving their money, they have those skills. They know how to put something into production. They know who to hire. They know about a business plan. They know
they've put
what
in
a
the work.
Market is. They put in the work. if I had to choose between being someone who's going to get money from the venture capitalist or being the actual venture capitalist, I'd much rather be just the person who's like choosing the ideas. And I mean, obviously I think we'd probably all rather be the person who just has billions of dollars to invest in whatever. That's always a good thing. However, that's the one thing that I take away from a lot of those is that the people who put in the work are the ones where you see eventually that Shark Tank took off and it actually became something because they put in the work to make it something. It's not just take the money and hope if something magic happens out of nowhere. It's putting in the work. It's always going to be putting in the work. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think we can keep going on and on, but we're pretty much at time with this one. And again, I know we said we're generalizing and all this. I think we can learn from both. And the thing is, and obviously Amanda and I have more of a connection to bootstrapping because that is how we've created and sold businesses. So if we sold them, that means they were somewhat of a success with employees, with contractors. So with that being said, like, to me, the bootstrapping is just like, it's grassroots, it builds foundations, it has substance, not always, but in general, I think obviously with our businesses, and that what we can learn from the VCs is to live in that possibilities, is to believe in that money, we deserve that money and it comes to us, because a lot of us have money kind of issues. And then from the VC world, I love that you're living in that possibilities. And if you want your business, like, put in the work. And it's great that you brought up Shark Tank. I love Shark Tank. And those people who get the investments are also those people who put in the work. You have those people who have great ideas, and that's great. But then you have those people who have already put in the work that show up, that say, okay, and have the possibility of growth, right? So that's another thing about that. And I think that comes from like looking at how people have bootstrapped, that scrappiness, that eye on the money and the conscientiousness of like where the dollar is going, and not just, I cannot tell you how many VC packets startup packets that I've looked at, and they're asking for money solely for salaries. And there's no like return on investment. There's no like action plan of what this particular salaried person is going to do in the next year in order to increase profit. Why am I going to pay you to really think about that. Like, what is the work that you're putting in? How are you showing up? Because it needs to be more in most cases. Not just pre-asking, not just at the ask and after they ask, but also pre-asking for that money.
100%. 100%. We want to hear about your ideas. We want to know what you're thinking about in your businesses. So if any of this resonated with you, drop us a comment, send us an email, DM us on our Instagram. Let us know what you're feeling as far as venture capitalist bootstraps. How have you started your business? There is a poll. We're going to do a poll on this and see how you've started your businesses. So let us know. We were always interested in knowing what you guys are doing as you're listening to our show.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, regardless if you are going the VC route or if you're bootstrapping, just make sure that you are doing all the things that we spoke about and putting in the work behind the scenes, making sure you see outside of the forest in which you are in. And we wish you all the best. We love entrepreneurship. Like, this is something that Amanda and I talk about all the time. We love it so much. That's why it's our business. We love it so much. That's why we continue to beat ourselves up and start new businesses and have more employees and like keep going. Like, both of us have multiple businesses. And I think that it's really important that you understand, like, you got this, regardless of which way you go. Just make sure that you're putting in the work and looking at the big picture and the whole, so that way you can actually create a business that is scalable and sellable in the future and has more depth. So, all right, till next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone, it's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.